Enjoy, guys. I'll hit the go live button here. All right. It's always interesting because I never know when to hit the go live button. So everybody just heard us talking about our little preamble there, but that's okay. That's okay. Anyway, guys, what's going on? I'm Matt. This is Photosynthetic. Oh, wait a minute. I got the wrong thing. Oh, there we go. Here, we're going to close that window. I'm Matt. This is Photosynthetic, and someday I'm going to learn how to work this stuff correctly. Right. Oh, no. I still have the wrong tab open. Ah, there we go. Jesus Christ. Honestly, I've done this before. Anyway, Saturday Night High. Everybody, welcome to the show. Stoked to have you all here. Guys, how's it going?
Good.
It's going
good. Thank you.
All right. Tonight, we're going to be talking the indoor seasons. What you have to do as a indoor grower to deal with changes in the seasons. For me, I know I've got all sorts of stuff that I have to contend with being up here in the Great White North, the lovely Canada, as it were. And we've got a good spread of different growers from different geographies. And that being said, we're going to take a few minutes to introduce to you all of tonight's panelists. So, guys, let's take a few minutes. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you got growing on right now. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'm over on the East Coast. So I'm Cheddar Bob 13 over here in Maine. I'm an indoor living soil grower. And right now I'm just running a tester strain for Boneyard Seeds. It's Bruce Banner number 3 crossed with his Space Cheese.
Oh, very nice.
So yeah, just running that, coming into the summer season. So I don't know, when we get talking more, I'll explain my regimen, but that's me.
Fantastic. And yeah, Cheddar Bob, you were on the last cast, and definitely happy to have you back here, man.
Pleasure to be back.
Yeah. Who wants to go next?
I'll go because I'm on
I'll
the
go next.
Go for it, Anthony.
Oh, there you go.
All right, Anthony, to you, sir.
All right. Thanks, man. My name's Anthony. I'm from Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. And it's nice to be here. Like Matt said, we kind of got people from all over. So I'm interested to see what they have to say and where their abouts are and what they got to do. And, I'm a new face kind of in the game, but I've been growing for a few years and started again. So been loving it, working from home through the whole pandemic thing. So it made me get back into growing, and then Arizona recently legalized everything. So I'm definitely back on it. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, definitely glad to have you here, Anthony. Mr. Chad Westport. Most people are probably aware of who you are, especially if you're following the show. But if they're not aware, why don't you bring us up to speed?
Yeah, my name's Chad Westport. I am a home grower out in Washington State. So Washington State is not a bad environment to be a grower. There's the east side of the mountains. Yep. East side of the mountains and the west side of the mountains. You get two dramatically different climates. And I'm actually right on the coast. So that's a third alternate thing that you need to deal with. But yeah, that is a little home grower out on Washington.
Nice.
Awesome. All right, Jeff, Steve, which one? Who's going next?
Go for it, Steve.
All right. Old Time Rock and Grow, aka Steve. I'm in Michigan, and I've been growing for about a year, and this is my YouTube debut.
Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate you inviting me on. So
yeah,
hopefully it's gonna be a good fun night, and we have some good discussion.
Totally.
But yeah, I've been growing for about a year. I got 3 autos that are in flower right now, and then I won some seeds from Photosynthetic's giveaway last year from ILGM, and I've got 3 of the photos, Power Plant, Critical Mass, and Train Wreck, all in 1 gallons now, going to be transplanted in about a week. So that's what I got growing on.
Right on. Well, glad to hear, man. Jeff, Mr. Mad Hatter. Round it out, buddy.
I'm Jeff, Mad Hatter Organics, just south of Matt, down in Medicine Hat, Alberta. And you can find me on YouTube, Mad Hatter Organics as well, same as Instagram. And I've been growing for a few years now, and just recently got my whole room set back up after doing a big deep clean, and I got 2 OG Kush and 2 Granddaddy Purples, compliments of UMAT from my LGM, and that's about it.
Awesome. Well, hey, glad to hear at least I've been able to help out a few of their grows here and whatnot. And shout out to Jack Terps out there in the comments. He's definitely a big fan of you, Mr. Chad Westport. So
What's up, Jack?
Definitely glad to have everybody here. This should be a stellar discussion, guys. So hot, wet, cold, and dry. The elements, everything that we have to put up with as indoor growers. And I was thinking about this before the cast here. I think that we as indoor growers, and I'm probably going to get lambasted for this, is we have it infinitely harder in terms of the environment over the outdoor grower. And the reason why I say this is because we have control. Outdoors, you're gonna just deal with what you have. You have to. You don't have much of a choice, short of possibly some tarping in the fall, to protect those giant nugs against too much moisture falling on them. But otherwise, I mean, you're at the mercy of the elements. Inside, though, depending on if you're growing in your basement or growing in your garage, maybe you're growing in your bedroom, you've got different seasons to put up with, because in the winter, you definitely have to do things differently, I find at least, than in the summer. And I think that would be a general consensus. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. So to kick things off then, let's kind of go around the virtual room, as it were, and everybody talk about what their biggest challenge is. Is it the hot? Is it the wet? Is it the cold? Is it the dry? Or is it really different depending on the season? And I'll just pick on somebody to start with. Let's go to you, Mr. Chad Westport. Why don't you tell us the tale of the seasons? What do you find the most difficult? What's your challenge?
Well, the most difficult challenge for me is controlling the heat. Sometimes I need more, sometimes I need less. I recently have switched from HPS lighting and flower over to LED. And I did that right before the winter. And I kind of regret that because I've had to heat that room artificially this entire winter. But if this were last summer, I would have been completely happy because I had to run the air conditioner. So temperature for me, finding that happy balance, particularly where I am in the house with tents, finding that balance is the hardest for me. Everything else is manageable, but if you're really trying to be specific and keep it to within a 2 or 3 degree margin, that's where I struggle.
Of course. And I think that is the challenge, is trying to maintain that steady point and whatnot. How about you, Anthony? What do you find challenging each year? What's the difficult part of the season for you?
Well, I'm battling it right now because here in Phoenix, currently we're starting to get in the higher 90s and pretty soon triple digits again. And I don't find it as hard in the wintertime because our winter times aren't kind of like your guys's. Wintertime here in Phoenix is just kind of throwing a sweater on, and that's about it. So I maintain it really well in the winter, and then now that the summer's coming up, I've had to incorporate like a mini AC humidifier type thing, and it definitely helps bring my temperature down and things like that. So I agree with him that managing the heat is probably my biggest struggle and the biggest challenge that I have going on right now.
Gotcha. So are you planning on growing overnight? Like, what's your light cycle right now? Are you flowering in the evenings or do you?
So yeah, I definitely have it like opposite, where the lights come on in the night and then during the day they're off. So that does help maintain a little bit of the heat management and the humidity and stuff like that.
Right on, right on. Cheddar Bob, tell us the tale.
Hello.
What's
So,
difficult for you?
I'm right on the same page with everyone else. The hardest thing is temperatures, but I don't struggle with it a whole lot. Like, I have my stuff set up so that I'll be vegging through the hottest parts of the year, which over here is like July and August. So I'll take those months to veg because the really, the heat isn't horrible where I am. I'm on the coast of Maine, and we won't get above 95 but twice. So running the LED inside, my temps will get mid 80s, but in veg I can circumvent that heat stress with humidity. So running my stuff at night like I do certainly helps, not only with the electricity bill but with heat as well. So yeah, that's my biggest thing. Outdoors is a whole different story, but indoors it's really just heat management, and I let things sway probably a good 10 degrees, 10 to 15 degrees. But there's not much I can do I don't have an enclosed area, so I can't AC this whole room. So I'm limited. So I feel like holding it within that range is optimal for my style of growing.
Right.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Steve,
Did it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Steve, Mr. Old Time Rockin' Grow. You've only been growing for a year now. Have you been experiencing challenges as you've gone from season to season? And, just dealing with your environment, what have you found to be the biggest challenge?
Really, they've been minor, and I'm pretty lucky. I'm down in the basement in my house in Michigan, so we have definite big changes in the seasons, but we put central air in the house like 4 months before I started growing, and the temperature in the room stays pretty constant year round. Humidity in the summer can be a problem. I mean, the central air helps with that, but I've run a dehumidifier. There's been a couple of times where it's like maybe I should put a humidifier in the tent, but I'm not. It kind of makes me nervous blowing that mist up with the lights and stuff around. So, but I mean, it hasn't been extreme because the central air keeps the humidity down. It does get up a little bit, but just the little dehumidifiers cleared it up pretty good. And with that said, this year probably I'll run into all kinds of problems, but I got lucky in the last year. So
Yeah, there's always going to be a constant challenge, I find. If it's not the environment, it's something else, pest pressure, something along those lines. Mad Hatter, tell us the tale. What's going on with your space seasonally?
Yeah, like I said, I'm from Alberta, so it gets minus 40, minus 50 here, and I grow in a basement next to a concrete wall, so it is freezing cold in here, and I have to run supplemental heat, run a space heater, and one of those hot mist humidifiers. So the hot mist helps warm my tents up and stuff, but yeah, for the winter time, I run supplemental heating, and then I have central air in the house. So in the summertime, it's not too bad. I don't have to run my heaters really, but definitely in the springtime, we get a lot of storms and lots of rain. So dehum's behind me, always pumping away, and I have controllers that really just dial everything in. All my VPDs always in check. And yeah, nighttime I sway, 8 to 10 degrees, so it's not too bad, but I definitely have to compensate for the winter.
Yeah, no, and I mean, you and I are very close geographically, so I think a lot of the same things that you're fighting with, I'm fighting with as well. In terms of I've got to have a heater in my space, but more so to that point, it's the control. I've got it on a digital thermostat as well as my humidifiers and whatnot, and that's always the biggest thing for me is humidity. We're terribly dry here in Alberta, so I'm always fighting to have humidity in my space, with the exception of the this those summer storms where it just suddenly gets really humid here, because I actually use my exhaust fan as my dehumidifier almost the entire year. So that's just sort of one of the unique things that I've done with my grow setup, that I think was probably quite a bit different than other geographies. But that would be my next question then, guys. What do you do that you think is probably a bit more unique to your area to help control your environment?
One thing.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Let's go with Cheddar Bob.
Well, I run living soil, so that's pretty. I mean, in this area, there's not very many of us that are doing that, and with this bed that I run, right? You can see all my my cover crop and stuff. So I have a gravity fed watering system that is continuously keeping this 170 gallons of soil moist. So that really helps keep everything balanced as far as humidity and stuff. I've never once had a problem with too much or too little. It's really crazy how balanced that this amount of soil being consistently moist helps with that humidity. So, I mean, that's one thing that I do differently, is just running a constant watering system, with the living soil. So.
That's a real interesting point. And I think I'd have to agree with what you're saying in that regard, because I do notice that since I brought my 3 beds online for 200 plus gallons, with the blue mats, of course, it does help maintain that moisture level a little bit more in that regard. And I think that makes sense too, because if everything in that space is set to that same humidity, then things don't have to work as hard. How about you, Anthony?
Well, what I was going to say is, I think for me is utilizing some of the more user-friendly things they have available to the grower. For instance, I use kind of a Wi-Fi thermometer type thing. I can log in and check my environment, and if I see something's over or under, I can go make an adjustment as needed, because I'm not fully there on all the automation that I want to get to. On my next runs, I'm hoping to incorporate a little bit more things like Matt said. And, one thing I do, like Steve also mentioned, is I have central air that goes directly into that room where my tent is. So, that definitely does help me control it, because like I said, it's starting to get super hot here, and running my AC constantly is again, something that just you got to do.
Yeah, for sure. I only have to encounter the AC come the summer. Normally around June, I'll start seeing that kick on a little bit more. Chad, you gotta have to deal with humidity. I mean, that's got to be a big battle for you. Why don't you tell us about it?
I do. Humidity is kind of a constant battle here. And it was interesting, what Cheddar Bob and you were saying about just kind of having like a constant moisture level in the beds. And that helps you kind of dial in like a steady level. Because absolutely, yeah, when after I water, the humidity is definitely higher in the tents. And it's lower obviously when it needs water. So some things that I can do is, I don't really go to saturate the soil. I almost kind of want to keep them on like a borderline of thirsty, for kind of a variety of reasons. But actually, you can kind of help maintain and control humidity through that. Again, there's not that just wet mass in there. Your temperature is going to play a big deal in it too. Just the way the air holds the temperature. But I went out and got, at like Home Depot or the industrial 50 gallon or whatever size dehumidifier. That's probably one of the better purchases that I've made for my grow environment. I have multiple little tents, and so I can't necessarily control the humidity inside of them. I have to control the lung room itself. So there is a little bit of variation within my tents, but fan speed, the amount of water in there, the temperature that you're running it at, and just leaving the door open too. That those things will all make a difference and kind of help me manage that humidity there.
Yeah, I agree too.
I think that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, Steve, you're still new. What are you experiencing, I'd say, is issues that you're having to deal with environmentally that you think you may have to get special equipment for? Or have you?
Well, like Anthony said, I got some of the Wi-Fi monitors in the tents too, so I keep a pretty close eye on that. And upping and lowering the exhaust fan speed has kind of been one of my big things to do to control things. And like I say, summer comes, I run the dehumidifiers, and just keep a close eye on it. But again, I mean, I'm real lucky because it's not major swings, so I just got little like $40 dehumidifiers, and they do just what they need to. So
Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. And it's good when you have everything just sort of sitting nice and level like that.
hmm
Jeff, what about you, dude? I mean, I of course talked about what I do here in Alberta, but down in your basement, what are you doing that you think might be a little bit different?
Uh-oh.
I'm just a big fan of automation, I guess. I like to, I guess you can kind of say Inkbird's been sponsoring me a bit, and they've thrown me a couple Wi-Fi temp and humidity controllers. So yeah, like Anthony and Steve said, the Wi-Fi stuff is a huge help, but that is, I mean, it just takes all thinking away from it. Just set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah.
As long as I have my heater and my humidifiers and my DHUM, I'm good.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And I mean, you touched on the one thing there, automation, and it makes things so much easier. It gives you some reassurance that things are being taken care of, but also when you can dial in some level of notification when you're away from the grow room. What are you guys using for monitoring? What are you guys using for automation, if anything? Tell me about it.
Yeah, like I said, Inkbird.
Yeah, I've got the Inkbird stuff too. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
I've got Vivo Sun seedling heat mats and for my cloning propagation tent. So, other than that, it's Inkbird.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I use Inkbird stuff too, and I actually have a Wi-Fi camera that I can, if I'm away from my house, log in and just look and peek into the grow room just to see if anything's changed or there's a light on that's not supposed to be, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
my next purchase.
Yeah. Guilty of doing that, leaving the lights on. Chad, you got things automated? What kind of gear you?
I don't like. I like the idea of them. I'm a big data person, so yeah, all of that information at my fingertips, I think would be really fun to play with. My brain though still straddles that line of you never write anything down, never leave any proof of anything that you've done. It's a completely different world that I live in. But my brain still has a hard time with that. Like I have intentionally started grows writing all of these things down, my temperature, my humidity, my moisture level, what I'm feeding it. But I get a few weeks into it and I don't know, my brain seizes up. So I haven't gotten the automated route. The closest I would say that I am is I have some AC Infinity fans, and they come with a monitor for temperature and humidity, not something that connects to like a mobile device or anything, just reads out on a display screen. But you're also able to set it If it's, if my humidity spikes, I can set a humidity alarm and it's going to knock the fan up and increase my output. So that's about the extent of my automation. Although I will say I'm fascinated by the idea and would probably be in hog heaven. I sometimes the more information you have, the worse you grow. That can happen to me sometimes because you try to overthink it, and I've been guilty of that.
You raise a really, really good point. Too much overthinking, too much information. Tomorrow, I've got the regular episode of Meet the Grower dropping with Welcome to the Grow Tent. So, yeah, if you're not familiar with him, that dude is so zen. He is just absolute as hands off as you can be in the garden. And, that's, I think, something that really helps is just being able to have an environment that you're familiar with and that you can trust in and be able to step away from it knowing that things should be okay for the most part. But that's the thing, too. Sometimes things don't go so well. You've got a fan that breaks or your AC doesn't come on when it should. Who's had some environmental issues, horror stories? I've got a good one to talk about, but I want to hear from the rest of you first. Somebody lead in with something.
So I would say the worst thing I've had happen is a runaway blue mat. Really, and it's actually not that bad of a problem because I run a 5-gallon reservoir for each 4x4 bed.
Okay.
So, it soaked things up a little bit, bounced my pH around. My plants suffered for about a week, but it dried out relatively quickly. But that's the biggest thing that I've really run into is a runaway blue mat. And I consider myself very lucky in that sense. So
I found that myself that they are a little tricky at first and whatnot. And I actually had an air bubble in one, which caused some issues and whatnot. But once you get those things working, man, are they ever awesome.
They're fantastic. And the thing, talking about automation, I run the gravity fed system off a 5-gallon bucket rather than it being hooked up to a faucet with the pressure reducer that's always running. Now, if I had had a runaway blue mat with that, I would have had constant water just pouring into my beds.
Yes.
So that's one of the negatives I see about that blue mat setup. Whereas where I have mine with the 5-gallon res, my beds took it like a champ. 5 gallons, they were like, oh, Jesus, it kind of sucks. But, they pounded through it. So I'm a big proponent of the gravity fed system. It really limits the room for error.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. That's exactly how I've got it set up myself. And short of having things actually run out of water once or twice because the things drink more sometimes than you realize, I like the idea that there's not a lot that can really go wrong with it. You're not going to have a pump fail. If the power goes out, you're not going to lose water. It's going to do its thing.
Yeah. I mean, I can leave. So my beds go through about a gallon a day. As long as I have someone that will come and just fill the reservoir. That's all they have to do is fill it with tap water. That's all I use. It's not like having someone coming in and having to water your plants. You know what I'm saying? Like I already have the watering system set up. So it cuts that error out, someone else's room for error out of the equation. I can leave for like a week or so, 10 days. I can go on a vacation and not worry about my plants. And that's the best thing. Another great thing I love about the blue mats and growing in living soil is it doesn't control my schedule,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that definitely agree with all points on that. And great product. Absolutely love them. I'm going to do a video here very soon on some of the pain points that I've had and, ways to overcome them. And there's not that many. And quite frankly, it's more of me just being dumb and not reading the instructions. And I'm sure nobody's ever done that. Environmental mishaps. Who wants to go next?
One thing I did too is just I forgot to water in time. I thought I had an extra day or so, and I came back to my plant. I'm growing a Barney's Farm Genetic Runts auto flower in one of my other rooms, and I came back and opened those doors and the whole plant was limp and the leaves were down and it just looked scary, terrible, you know? So I thought I screwed the whole thing up, and I ended up watering it. And a few hours later, it started to perk. And by the next day, it fully recovered, but it was definitely just a misjudgment because it started taking on more water. And I thought I had an extra day or two to leave it and unattended. And when I went to look at it, it looked terrible. So that was probably my biggest mistake on this current run.
And I'm sure we've all done that. I know I definitely have. You think you think you have one more day. It's almost lights out. They're a little bit less than praying.
Yeah.
You're like, I'll be fine.
It's exactly what happened.
Not with the blue mats.
Yeah.
I
That's
found
why I wanted to follow that.
is
Right.
depending
Not
on,
with the blue mats. I guess.
go ahead, Chad.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was moving on. My probably worst environmental disaster was not opening the tent in time with the HPS, and it just cooked everything. Not to a point of no return, but yeah, you don't want your room at 94 degrees for long.
No.
Not unless you're supplementing with CO2, but hey, that's another story.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Mine was auto pots. I didn't set my auto pots up properly the first run. Didn't have the copper little mat that goes in the bottom of the bucket to stop the roots from coming out the bottom. And a big pile of roots in the tray, in the flood tray. And the roots actually grew up into the valve and stuck my valve open.
Oh
And it
no.
just constantly poured and poured and poured. And I, at the time, had my Inkbird humidity controller set up improperly without the proper alarms. And, yeah, my humidity was at percent and my res was completely dry. That was pretty awesome. Plants weren't happy with me.
I think most growers are going to experience some type of water issue. It just comes with the territory. Steve, have you run into anything similar yourself you can tell us about?
I've had one kind of similar to what happened to you, but not nearly as extreme. I have a Wi-Fi smart power strip, and it went wacky one night and left the lights on. But I noticed it the next morning and wrote the company. They sent me another one for free, and life is good. Now I have two. So,
Nice.
but that's really been the biggest thing. And forgetting thinking you have one more day again to water. So, but yeah, I've been lucky so far. But
Absolutely.
I've been working from home ever since. I mean, I started working from home and the plans were already in place, start growing. So it was like a week after that, I dropped my first seed. So I've been pretty much at home the whole time now. So
Yeah, silver linings of the pandemic. I know there's a few
Mhm.
out there.
yeah,
That's
this
for sure.
goatee too.
That
That
is
was not
amazing.
around before the pandemic.
Right. I pale in comparison to a couple of you guys. Jeez.
That's a pretty good goatee for a year and a bit.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah. Apparently, to join tonight's cast, you must have had some sort of facial hair. Right on. So for me, it's, I mean, I've talked about this before in the channel and whatnot, but I had a insulated or a non-insulated pipe go up from my grow space into my attic in my garage. And in the wintertime, what this caused was rain coming from the pipes themselves. And all I had to do was insulate the pipe, but it was just that differential going from a really nice warm space to a minus 30 space in my garage attic where sudden condensation and water would come down. And I got lucky, but that's also how I found out that my HLG lights are totally waterproof. So, hey, silver linings.
There you go.
So, I guess just kind of open it up to the floor here. Does anybody have anything that they wanted to discuss in regards to their grow space, their environment, special considerations that they have to make different times of the year to make things just work.
Right.
I
Well,
got. Oh yeah, go for it, Jeff.
oh, thank you, Matt Hatter. I was just gonna say, and the reason, I talked about temperature being my biggest deal. Anthony mentioned that as well. But the reason we just kind of care about temperature is because we want the leaf surface temperature to be a certain degrees, because that's going to help it transpire and sweat and take up nutrients from the roots. And that's the whole point. Again, too cold, it's not sucking up enough. Too hot, that's not good either. And there's going to be a difference between the HPS or a HID system and an LED as far as like where you're going to run your room temperature. And so, again, I earlier was nailing everything with the HID as far as temperatures, but you run your room a little bit cooler with that just because of the way the light and the heat works. So yeah, when I switched to LED, that was when I had to start getting a little bit creative. But we talked about managing temperature, and I just wanted to say that's why it's important. There's a variety of things, but really it's the temperature. It really drives a lot of your growth. So that's why it's been important. So I just wanted to slip that one in there.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip, Chad. And VPD is so important. If you're watching and you're unaware, vapor pressure deficit, go look it up. There's, I've got some stuff that talks about it too. Even myself, like my veg tent is just sitting over there in the corner. Recently, I had realized that things were running just a little bit too cool. And what I did was I actually raised up my light, turned it up more, and got a little bit more heat that way. And lo and behold, everything exploded to the point where things are almost too big. But hey, worst problems to have, right?
I agree with Chad with the temperature is super important there. Like I killed off probably $60 to $70 worth of seeds just because my temps were just too cold for them to germinate. They hated it. So, I got a seedling heat mat, and lo and behold, 100% germination all the time.
Yeah, you got to keep those roots warm, especially when they're little.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've automated is I've got the heat mat and then I've got the Inkbird controller. So, I keep them right around 77 degrees when I'm germinating everything, and it's worked out great. So
that's funny you guys mentioned that because I'm starting, 6 more on because I'm about to harvest, and I haven't used the heat mat, and I got about 3 out of the 6 that have sprouted, but it seems like the other ones are a little bit delayed because of the little bit colder than I would like to have it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got the opportunity to be a tester for Mephisto Genetics there back in November, and they sent me some tester seeds. I went to go germinate them, and one sprouted, and I killed off the rest. So I was super disappointed in myself, and after that, I was like, not messing around anymore. Got to commit this math.
Yeah, I'm probably going to purchase one ASAP.
Yeah, for sure. And Inkbird actually sells a little controller that works for those heat mats. It's got a sensor on it, and it'll cycle it up and cycle it on and off to maintain that temperature at the right level. Because you don't want those seeds getting too warm either. That being said,
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's cool they have that, because I was going to say one of the mistakes I've made while using a heat mat is it dried out my paper towel too fast.
Yeah.
I didn't look at it.
Yeah.
That's what
the contest I won last year with Matt. I won an Inkbird controller too, and then the rep from Inkbird reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in testing some stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, I sure would." So I got the Wi-Fi gateway, and then I got the Wi-Fi controller too with the probe in there, and I mean, I just sprouted 4 tomatoes in that this last week. So
they just sent me a gun, temp gun, and that's what I used to do, leaf temps and get my VPD in check.
I just bought that same temp gun.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, works great.
Sorry. Go ahead,
starting
Steve.
to pay attention to the leaf temperature as opposed to the room temperature. So I thought that was pretty cool. So
Oh, that's great. And, again, just
Yep.
something to be aware of. Leaf temperature is very, very important
Mhm.
for proper aspiration, because those plants are just, well, it's a big water pump essentially, which leads to my next question. Water. We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. We talked about water. Everybody has to get water to their plant somehow. I've recently realized that RO water is not the best way to feed my plants, and have gone back to tap water. What do you guys do for water for your plants?
I'm
I
straight up
installed
water.
there you go.
Everybody answer at once. You should really do a better job of directing this. Jeff, why don't you go?
I'll go. So I'm straight up tap water.
Yeah.
You know, out here in Maine, we have really, really clean water anyways. So I happen to be from an area that has lots and lots of very, very rich people. So they pay for like extra technology, like UV lit water systems and stuff like that, instead of using chlorine and fluoride and stuff like that. It's pretty crazy. So my water from the tap comes out at like 32 ppm and 8.2 pH.
Nice.
So I throw it right in my buckets, fill up 1 gallons from the sink, bring it downstairs and fill up my 5 gallons, and done. Super easy. And with the life I have in my, my beds, boom, and this one in back, there's plenty of life going on to work through that pH coming out of the water. So
yeah, absolutely. The soil life will buffer that pH. So will the plant itself in the root zone. So did you say you take like right out of the tap, you go in, you don't have to do anything for chlorine or anything along those lines?
Nope. Our water department doesn't use chlorine or chloramine. They have this like UV filtration process.
That's cool, man.
Crazy.
Yeah, the UV will sanitize it and kill off all the pathogens. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so I mean, we have like, the reason we have that system is because like the Rockefellers and Martha Stewart and the Fords and all those people like live within like a mile radius, so they need their UV water.
Your neighborhood was giving out the full size candy bars during Halloween.
They were giving
Hey,
out
if
like
you're benefiting from it,
they were
there you
giving out
go.
they were giving out like the Costco packs of candy.
The 10 packs.
Yeah.
Right
Here,
on.
take these to the other towns. Here. Yeah, but
What about you, Anthony? What's the water like down in Arizona?
Well, unlike there where Cheddar was just talking about, they do use chlorination in our watering system. So in the beginning, I was, taking it outside for over 24 hours, say like a 5-gallon bucket, letting it dechlorinate like that, and adjusting it from there. But recently, I would say a few months ago, a buddy of mine moved to a bigger home. He wanted to install a better RO system, water softener type thing. So he sold me his smaller system. So I recently installed that. So I've been using RO water and just, treating it with my nutrients and stuff to keep up. And I like it. I love it. It comes out about 7.8 pH. So that and when I do my nutrients, it usually lowers it enough where I sometimes don't even have to use a pH adjuster, which is nice.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Jeff, what do you do?
Yeah, I use RO water. I can't stand my tap water. I grew up in Vancouver, BC, and they had, 5 to 10 ppm, and it's beautiful, beautiful water. But out here, it's like 300, 350 ppm. It's absolutely disgusting. We get it right out of this. Yeah, we get it out of the South Saskatchewan, and it changes too. It changes throughout the year. So I don't mess with it. I just go RO water, and it comes out about 7.2 pH. So really, I don't have to do anything. The organics will buffer all that. So it's
Gotcha. Steve, are you doing anything to your water?
That's my biggest issue.
Yeah.
Our city water stinks. Um, I'm probably about 400 ppms and real close to 8 pH on there. And I think that has caused me some issues trying to work around it. I mean, and RO is really not an option for me because we pay by the gallon too. So, my water bill would be probably more than my electric bill if I went to RO. So, I mean, been considering spring water, but I've kind of I found a product I like that lowers the pH and I think helps. It's got the chelation properties built into it too for organic soil. So, but I've definitely run into some issues, I believe, due to water. So that's what I'm trying to figure out right now.
Always a challenge, and there's definitely going to
Yep.
be different things that you have to concern yourself to. For me, it's the water's coming from the mountains, so I'm actually getting some of that glacial runoff, which I actually now realize was more beneficial than it was harming things. And I was having problems with my plants. I was having deficiencies because of it. So I've since switched back to actually just doing dechlorinated tap water. And it seems to be working out pretty well. And I'm happy with things, the last couple of weeks. But, these are plants. They take time.
Hey,
Yeah,
you
I know.
should
Nope.
you should
Just
get your good minerals from all those mountain runoff.
Yep.
Yeah, and just a quick little hint for those of you that are leaving your water out for dechlorination rather, you can just add a couple drops of humic acid, and that'll absorb and dissipate the chlorine.
Like instantly.
Yeah,
That
like
couple drops
like
per gallon.
yeah, just a couple drops per gallon.
Cool.
Wow, there you
Yeah.
go.
Definitely have to check that out.
I haven't tried the drops myself, but that is something that I do. I always try to leave the water out for at least 24. And usually now I can get at least 48 hours just because I'm not watering as frequently because I'm trying to keep my plants a little bit dry. But I'll leave it out. That also helps bring the water up to room temperature. And for me, being in a non-organic, kind of a synganic soil, I don't have the microbes to buffer that pH for me. So I have to watch that. I'm pretty lucky.
We'll get you there, Chad. We'll get you there.
I know we're working on me. I'm redeemable. But my ppm comes out about 70 to 80, so not a big deal there. But yeah, I leave it out to kind of acclimate to room temperature. I find that the pH swings in the water less when it's at room temperature. And then, I do all my nutrients and then I pH it and put it in because I don't have the microbes. But yeah, leaving it sitting out is something that I always kind of recommend, if not for the dechlorination factor, because some are using the chloramine, which I don't think evaporates. It's one or the other. But still, just to bring the temperature or the water temperature to room temperature.
And you hit on something really good there too. I mean, one of the worst things you can do is go get a jug of ice cold water and then water your plants with it because they're gonna shock those roots. They need to be at a decent temperature and whatnot. So
Yeah, I have a little.
reservoir.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I have a little aquarium heater in my res just to keep it at that perfect temperature, 21, 22 degrees. Perfect root zone temp.
Right.
That's
on.
way too cold.
It's better than minus 30 like my walls are.
Yeah.
He's just
That's
American, so
Yeah, us Americans have a hard time
Oh
converting.
yeah,
things.
sorry.
I just played with the Celsius Fahrenheit thing.
72?
About that 74, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, 70.
Yeah.
You say at 20, we'd be ice skating on it. So
Yeah, that's how we can tell kids are doing drugs in America if they know the metric system.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that meme? The only people in the United States that know the metric system are drug dealers.
Oh yeah.
It's all about learning. Well, and Jack Terps has just started up a hashtag convert Chad Westport to grow organics. So there you go. Look for that trending on Instagram next.
Chad is on his way. He knows it. He can feel it. He feels the tug of war inside his soul pulling him towards the Jedi Force.
I do it outdoors. Inside, I'm getting closer, but I've had that battle of being in like 3-gallon pots and using only like 6 at a time. It's hard to make a custom soil mix blend for that size of container. Granted, you could make a larger volume, store it and keep it, but that also requires space. But yeah, now that I'm switching things up, I might be going to a bed system, and bed systems you can run organically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, buddy.
I have to say
Thanks,
it's
Jack
probably the
Terps.
easiest run I'll ever have is just organics, man. Just set it and forget it kind of thing.
And I grow organics at a larger grow that I oversee, and we use smaller pots, and they are a fuck to keep controlled. Like they're a son of a bitch. If I can make a suggestion to people that want to go to organics, get the largest container you can, the largest container, and then work with your plant count within that. I have a 4x4. If I wanted to, I could fit 24 plants in this thing. I could run a sea of green, put 24 clones in here, veg for 3 days, and flower them. So it's not really a plant. What am I trying to say? Space issue. It's like get that huge organic mass, and you will be so happy with yourself. It takes so much of the work out of it. I wish I had been doing it 20 years ago when I started.
I've said it before. I'm a worm farmer now. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I've got those 3 big beds, and they're out there to make the worms happy. The fact I grow great cannabis in them is just a solid byproduct. As long as the worms are happy. So
Yep.
let's talk volume of space then, because that's really what it is. Working with that big bed, it's less likely to have a major impact from a small issue. But if you're working in a small space, like a 3x3 tent, for example, if your lung room is very cold or your lung room is very hot, it's going to affect that space. Is there anything that you're having to do or any problems that you're finding you're having because you're growing in a smaller indoor space? And does it vary with the season?
Humidity, I have a couple 3x3s, 4x4s, and then a couple 2x2s. Humidity is the biggest issue in the 2x2. That's just something you have to control. And so it's controlling the lung room and opening the door, watering with lights on, don't water before lights off. But yeah, in the smallest environment, humidity is you can't control it within the tent.
Yeah,
it's just not the space.
I'd agree with that. Even with the 3x4 there, I'm having to leave the top flap open just to exhaust a little bit more because I've only got so much control in the space. Aside from humidity, is there, I guess, anything heat-wise, cold-wise that you guys have run into issues with?
No.
No, I mean,
just so cocky. No.
Next. Are you guys monitoring temperature at like canopy level and then also at floor level to see how much of a difference between the root zone and the canopy? Because that could cause you issues too.
Yeah.
Good point.
I do that too. Because again, in Michigan, in the basement, mine are all on stands. Anyhow, nothing sits right on the floor. So yeah, I do keep one sensor down on the floor and then one up at the canopy. So
I run styrofoam, 2 inches of styrofoam on the floor just to keep it off that cold floor. But yeah, my sensors are right at the canopy level pretty much.
I stick my finger down in the soil and feel it. That's my thermometer.
Yeah.
Like the doctors did when you were little.
Wrong time to laugh.
What? No one else?
All right. Well,
no. I'm sorry, but one thing I do too is I notice I have to adjust sometimes my fan that goes on my driver on my light, because that can sometimes give off a lot of heat. And then I notice if, the fan is misdirected and my temperature changed, it could possibly be from that, because sometimes those drivers can, give off a lot more. And sometimes it might be good if you're in a colder time of year, and it might help.
Yeah, one thing I didn't figure out until late into this winter is I have a fan that blows across my quantum boards. The hotter they get, the shorter the life becomes of the diodes. So you want to keep it at a reasonable temperature. So I have it blowing across it. But you totally just hit the nail on the head. I thought the other day, I'm like, why am I not blowing from the top down to bring? Because usually you want to get that hot air up. So you got your exhaust up there. You want to get rid of the hot stuff. I was like, geez, why am I not blowing it down? And next winter, that is what I will do. Because you can still cool your lights, but yeah, I'm probably won't have to heat as much taking the hot air from the top to the bottom.
Fantastic. And I've seen that myself with a previous setup that I had. Oh yeah, there's Cheddar Bob just pointing out his fans and whatnot up top. And that's the thing, just having some sort of air moving around up top to circulate things. And microclimates, moving air throughout your entire space. Just something I've recently done is I went and moved a fan that I had, just one of those little tiny clip-on fans, stuck it down in an empty corner of the space just to keep air directed around on the floor, because I've got those big beds in there now, and I'm concerned about having air pockets on the floor and whatnot, buildups for mold. Just talking back to one of the environmental issues that I did face actually this year was we got really wicked cold in the winter for a couple weeks, as we often do here in Calgary. And what I noticed in the two corners of my grow space that are the most exposed to the elements, because just the way you have construction with the stud wall and whatnot, so the corners were basically very, very cold, and they were acting as like cold sinks for moisture, and it was pulling moisture in when it was super cold. And I actually ended up with a little bit of black mold in the two corners of my space there. So that's definitely something you totally want to avoid. Has anybody else had mold issues, seen mold in their space, had to deal with something along those lines? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Just good mold.
It's just
good mold.
Fair enough.
There you go.
Nobody?
No, I've been lucky enough where I have not had to deal with it.
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah, same.
In the
No
lung
PM
room.
or anything.
Go ahead, Chad.
Yep. Oh, in the lung room, I have seen that. I actually, in the room I'm in right now, there is the cable that comes up from under the house for the internet connection. And so there's a hole through the floor, and the cold air that comes up through that. I actually have the desk next to the corner. So there's just like its own little pocket there. The room stays warm, but that stays cold. And I moved some items the other day, and I was like, oh crap, I got a little bit of mold under there. So that was something. And in my original one, when I was a different house, in a garage, it was the winter time. And so the garage itself stayed so cool, but the rooms that I had built in it were so warm. I came out and it looked like there was a flood. My floor, the garage floor was wet. That was a big situation. I had to move everything in the garage, take the posters down. There was mold behind there. Like, yeah, be careful about that condensation. That's the magic word.
Yeah. Seen that.
I had the same issues you had, Matt, with the condensation freezing up on the non-insulated pipes there this winter. Now, I have a fresh air intake and right through my window, and it froze up solid. Minus 30 to plus 20 in here.
Yeah, and we can even have that in a day around these parts. That's probably one of the worst things of living in Alberta is we get what's called a Chinook. It's a temperature inversion where the warm air comes from the Vancouver area, and what happens is the cold air over top the mountains actually traps that warm air in space. And I mean, I've seen it go from minus 30 to plus 10 degrees here in 4 hours. It's just insane. And this is Celsius too. So that would be, well, minus 25 Fahrenheit to about I don't know, I'm guessing 40, 50 degrees. So it's just crazy temperature swings, and that's going to wreak havoc on your space too, potentially. Anybody ever deal with crazy temperature stuff just wreaking havoc on their space, sudden issues?
I'm about to. Go ahead, Chatterbot.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, July and August are my worst months for heat.
Yeah.
We, when I was younger, we used to have really, really banging cold winters. But for the past several, we get snow and stuff, but we had one winter where we were really cold. But besides that, it's really just July and August heat that we have to battle against. And like I said before, I figured out a schedule for my plants that I end up vegging for those hot months, so it doesn't affect my growth like it may if someone's flowering during those months right beside me. So
no, that makes sense.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, as we start winding things down here, as I was talking before we came online here, my good friend El Dubo Danktree, who's also a viewer of the show and has been on, contacted me beforehand and said he's got 2 cubic feet of pit moss to give away to anybody in North America with, we'll even include you guys here on the cast. So, I guess I can't include you guys in the cast. So you guys are all discluded. Everybody in the chat, pick a number between 1 and 100. And first person to get closest to it in the next 30 seconds. So
16.
I'm not letting you guys play. It's too awkward. Well, no, because we're time delayed, right? So
yeah.
Yeah. Everybody else in the chat's gonna go nuts. So I'm sitting here, I'm waiting. It's gonna start going. Boop, boop, boop.
Yep. I was gonna say too, like I kind of feel funny because I do have bad examples for everything you ask, but I think that's just because I've had plenty of chances to make mistakes. I've definitely made mistakes with getting the root zone too cold. Again, that's going to block out nutrients. It's going to mess with your pH, and it's going to stop the plant from uptaking. And that soggy root zone, that's no good. If you get like a night of too cold a root zone, you almost immediately see like a yellow, not like a faded yellow, but just like a straight up yellow, because it's not taking in certain nutrients. And then, again, the flip side, if you're running a room too hot, and this is, I'm going to label it bro science because I can't point to the paper, but if you run a room too hot for too long, you almost stand the chance of more hermaphroditic traits. That's just something that I have seen and experienced. So that's just kind of a 2 cents of I've been too cold, I've been too hot.
Yeah. Comes with experience, man.
Yeah, we get a lot of big swings too. I mean, it's been in the upper 40s to low 50s the last few days, but Tuesday it's supposed to be 85 and then back down to like 60 the day after. So they just throw all kinds of curveballs at us here.
Yeah.
I've seen days in Colorado where it was 60 degrees one day and snowing the next day. So I feel bad for Colorado. They get that almost every year.
Yeah, I've been through that there.
I've seen snow in June and September.
Pretty much. It's always an adventure here in Western Alberta. Well,
it's only going to get worse, folks. It's only going to get worse.
No, ain't that the truth, man? Ain't that the truth? I mean, I get to experience golf ball size hail this last year, which was just great.
Yeah.
How intensely frightening is that?
It was.
I can send you a video.
I mean, I see videos and I'm like, holy shit, I'm glad I don't live in that area, because if I got hit in the head with one of those, I'd be fucked. You get caught outside, you're like,
yeah.
I had all my outdoor plants. They were about a month and a half old. They're 3 feet tall. And I was like just booking it just to try to get them inside my garage. I managed to save all but one.
Oh man, it all black and blue. Looked like you just had that suction cup therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh man, like, damn. I mean, I've been hit with golf balls, and that shit hurts.
Yeah.
Dude, ice is no joke. Like, that's not.
It's like getting a paintball just over and over and over again.
Yes,
Yeah.
not cool.
You ask what it's like, and that's what it was like. A million golf balls dumped on my house over the course of a 10-minute period, and it was scary, man. Really, really
Yeah.
scary.
I mean, all the things going through your head, like shit, insurance. How's my car? How's my like?
Yeah.
And it's all over in like 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
It was funny. It wasn't even the house I didn't care about, insurance and whatnot. It was my garden, because it was everything had just kind of gotten planted, with the exception of some corn and a few other things, and just wiped right out. So, and I blame it on the fact that I planted tomatillos, because every year I seem to plant tomatillos, we have a major hailstorm. So I'm not planting those anymore.
Don't do it.
Skip a year.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
totally digressing here, guys. So, just real quick, Ariel in the chat, you won the prize of pit moss. And just if you guys aren't aware, pit moss, it's a paper substitute for peat moss. It does have peat moss in it, but it's got like newspaper, and they're using a refined process. Hoping to have the creator of pit moss on Meet the Industry here real soon. So, Ariel, congrats on winning that
Nice.
prize. Reach out to me, photosyntech1@gmail.com, and we'll get that to you. And big thanks to El Dubo Danktree for setting that up.
Yeah. Congrats.
Guys, I guess last thoughts. The environment and growing indoors. Any advice you want to give? Any things you want to touch on here before we wrap the show up?
I think the best thing is just automation. If you can get into that, it just helps you out. And anything that takes, more thought process, eliminates error, and, go for it.
Yeah, it allows you to focus more on the plant and itself and getting it, making sure that it's doing good.
Yep.
And if you can't automate, just keep a close eye on everything.
There you go.
And again, I mean, you can get like the monitors that I use that are Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. They're pretty cheap, and
Yeah.
you can download your data for like a couple months. I do that every so often and just look to make sure I don't have any big swings or anything. But yeah, just keep an eye on things. And I mean,
Yep.
I'm still a rookie, but that's what I do.
Sounds like you're doing it right. Looks like we lost Cheddar Bob there. Hopefully makes it back before the end there. Chad, any final words there? Last thoughts?
The environment is really important. There's usually three things that people will go back and forth on as the most important thing, and environment is pretty much always in that conversation.
Yeah.
So definitely do pay attention to it. Having the automation and that data is going to be very helpful, because you can check your room and what the temperatures say multiple times a day, but it's never going to be as complete as a chart as you're going to get from the automation. And just, kind of look at the size of the space that you're dealing with. Some the smaller spaces, they're harder to control individually. You might need to treat it as like a lung room. You might need to treat your outer room, and therefore the inside is going to be better. But yeah, definitely do take the time to dial in that environment, use the variety of techniques and methods and materials that are available to us. I've even seen people take the 1-inch styrofoam insulation and build just kind of a room around their tent just to create an extra layer. So they didn't have to heat a whole room or cool a whole room. They just did that little space. So yeah, the kind of long-winded, but environment definitely is important to the health and success of your grow. So great topic, Matt. I do appreciate it. And, thank you for kind of inviting me in here to kind of share a little experience too. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, Chad. And totally stoked to have you on tonight. And same with you, Anthony. Same with you, Steve. Jeff, any
Thank you.
final thoughts?
Yeah, like Anthony said, the automation. I mean, it's just it helps you dial in your environment. So easy. Just set your numbers and forget it. Like it's You know, if you have your alarm set up properly, then they tell you when things are out of whack. And yeah, Chad hit a good point there. There's three things that are on the top of the list. You know, lights, soil, environment. So
Yeah.
they're pretty key.
I agree with all.
And yeah, like I said last time, thank you so much for having me. It opens up your door opens up more doors for me.
Totally. And guys, if you haven't seen Jeff's channel, Mad Hatter Organics, I encourage you to go check it out. He's running through a great how to get started series and whatnot, and awesome content. I enjoy it. Same with go check out Chad on the FCP02 channel there on the what's the name of your grow channel again, Chad? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm muted there. It's the Perfectly Imperfect Grow Show, but Peter always just labels it the Home Grow Show. So yeah, they're interchangeable. It's a show of many names.
Yeah, and that was awesome. I was on there last week with you and Green
fun.
Goddess, who's going to be on next weekend's episode of Meet the Grower. We had a great chat this week, so stoked to have that conversation with her and whatnot, and again on your show. And Anthony, Steve, if anybody wants to chat with you more, how would we find you? Reach out on your social media?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram. I definitely want to try and get more of a grow channel going eventually. But I have a name of Mex Guyver, kind of a fan of the old show. So that's how you can find me on Instagram or YouTube. And I'm definitely going to be following you guys if I'm not already. And Matt, thank you for having me and letting me be part of your show.
Oh, totally, man.
Anthony, what was that Instagram handle again? You just kind of broke up a little bit.
Mex Guyver.
Mex Guyver.
Yeah.
Class.
I was gonna follow you anyway, but the name alone is worth a follow.
No doubt.
Right on. Thank you.
No
doubt.
Mex Guyver 40.
No, I don't think there's the number on there. It might be though. It might be that.
Anthony Montemay.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mex Guyver 40.
Right on.
Yeah, we just got it.
What about you,
Right
Steve?
on, fellas.
I'm on Instagram, Old Time Rock and Grow. I troll around
Nice.
on a few of the forums too, same name. So yeah, and thank you, Matt, for asking me on. I really appreciate it. This was a good time.
Oh,
I was
totally.
pretty nervous. Like I said, it's my first time on, so it was fun.
Same
Had a
here.
good time.
Yeah. You guys were awesome. Definitely want to have you back on another one. And guys, if you want to get a chance to be on the show here and whatnot, just follow me on Instagram or follow me over on Patreon there, where we do draws to get on this show monthly and whatnot. And just a side note, Cheddar Bob there, I guess his kid hit his modem, so he disconnected. And we'll have him on again anyway.
There we
So,
go.
guys, absolute pleasure having you on Saturday Night High, talking indoor seasons. Gentlemen, have a great night.
It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Peace,
Thanks,
everybody.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy.
Out.
See ya.